Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our podcast, Beyond the Silence, a podcast on the genocide in Bosnia. Today, in our fourth episode, we have the pleasure of welcoming Professor Francis A. Boyle, an American law professor and attorney who is particularly known in the areas of human rights, war crimes, and genocide. He earned his undergraduate degree from the University of Chicago and his law degree from the Harvard Law School. Professor Boyle is mostly known from our Bosnian experience, if I can say it like that, as he has been involved in various high-profile cases and legal actions in relations to the international law, including working as the legal counsel for the government of Bosnia and Herzegovina in the case against Serbia at the International Court of Justice in Hague concerning the alleged genocide during the Bosnian War. Mr. Boyle, we are really happy to have you with us today. Welcome to Beyond the Silence.
Well, thank you very much for having me on, and my best personal regards to all my friends in Bosnia and the Bosnian diaspora.
Mr. Boyle, one of my first questions to you is, how did you actually get involved back in the day? So you are known for creating and serving as the counsel for Bosnia and Herzegovina in the case 9-1, I think it was called, also known as the Bosnian genocide case versus Serbia at the Hague Tribunal back in 1993, I think it was. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Right. Well, what happened was when the war and genocide aggression started against Bosnia in March of 1992, I was serving as legal advisor to the Palestinian delegation to the peace negotiations in Washington, D.C., with overwhelming responsibilities there, helping the Palestinians. So there was really nothing I could do to help the Bosnians at that time. But to make a long story short, the peace negotiations, the Middle East peace negotiations, broke down in December of 1992. So at that point, I did have time to help the Bosnians, and I did some research, and I sent a letter to the Bosnian government recommending a lawsuit at the International Court of Justice against the rump Yugoslavia for genocide, and also to break the genocidal arms embargo against Bosnia and to stop the Vance-Owen plan. Well, again, to make a long story short, on March 6, 1993, I got a call from Sarajevo by satellite by the vice president, later friend of mine, Abe Ganic, to discuss my proposal set forth in my letter. Ganic is an engineer, went to MIT. I was at Harvard, and then became a professor of engineering at the University of Illinois in Chicago when I became a law professor here. So as an engineer, very logical, precise, we went through the whole lawsuit. It took about 40 minutes by satellite call. So then Ganic said, excuse me, he was going to approve the lawsuit recommended to President Izetbegovic, and the president was coming out to New York in about 10 days, and I should go out to New York and meet with him there. So I said, fine. So I proceeded to draft the lawsuit, went out to New York for the start of the Vance-Owen negotiations. The president was there. I advised the president on the Vance-Owen negotiations. He asked me my opinion on the Vance-Owen plan. And then in the second session, we went through the entire lawsuit. As you know, President Izbevich was a lawyer. And he asked me questions. And at the end of that, he signed a letter appointing me the general agent for the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina with extraordinary and plenipotentiary powers to institute and defend and argue all lawsuits on behalf of Bosnia and Herzegovina at the International Court of Justice, with instructions to sue Yugoslavia for genocide and seek indication of provisional measures of protection on behalf of Bosnia. That letter and all these world court proceedings can be found in this book, The Bosnian People Charged Genocide, which was also translated into Bosnian by my friend Smile Cekic at the State Institute for War Crimes and Crimes Against Humanity. You can also get it over there in Bosnia. So I went back to my hotel room, cleared out, got on an airplane, landed in the Hague on a Saturday morning, demanded that the World Court open up and receive me immediately, and filed the lawsuit that evening. It was Saturday, I guess March 20th or so, 1993. I demanded an emergency hearing by the court and stayed there in The Hague, demanding it every day until I got on I guess it was March 24th, the court said I would have a hearing date April 1 and April 2. So on April 1, April 2, I went into court and argued for Bosnia and won a massive, overwhelming victory for Bosnia on genocide. 3 measures of provisional measures of protection or order. The first, to Yugoslavia to cease and desist from committing all acts of genocide against Bosnia. The second measure, if I remember correctly, that was 13-1. Only the Russian judge dissented that Yugoslavia do everything in its power to stop all these paramilitary groups, terrorist organizations, surrogates in Bosnia inflicting genocide against the Bosnians. And the third, that Yugoslavia do nothing to aggravate or extend this dispute with Bosnia. That was unanimous. Then the World Court transmitted my order to the Security Council for enforcement, the UN Security Council. Under the UN Charter, it's for the Security Council to enforce the order. They got the order and refused to enforce it. The great powers there, United States, Britain, France, Russia, China, were not interested at all. Even though genocide, the World Court had found genocide was going on, and there was an obligation to prevent genocide, and the Security Council had an obligation to prevent genocide and enforce my order. They refused to do it. So at that point, I communicated again to Vice President Gonich to give my advice to the Bosnian presidency. I asked for his instructions to sue Russia, Britain, and France in order to break the arms embargo, since the Security Council members had imposed the arms embargo. Gonich presented that case to the presidency, but the presidency decided against that on the grounds that the Owen-Stoltenberg negotiations were about to open up, and they did not want to complicate those negotiations. So Gonich told me to go back and go against the Yugos a second time. Well, of course, I realized that at that point, no lawyer had ever won 2 orders from the International Court of Justice in one case since the World Court was founded in 1921. Even the team of lawyers in the case of Nicaragua versus the United States had tried and failed. But I had no alternative. The Owen Stoltenberg plan called for the Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina to be carved up into 3 little bitty pieces of land, one of which would have been immediately annexed by Croatia, the other immediately annexed by Yugoslavia, to destroy Bosnia's statehood under international law, to rob Bosnia of its UN membership so that the Bosnians could be eliminated. They go the same way as the Jews, that UN membership and the Bosnian army were the only things keeping us alive. And then to subject 1.5 to 2 million more Bosnians to ethnic cleansing, when we already had 1 million victims of ethnic cleansing, which I had already argued to the World Court the first time to get that genocide order. So I had no alternative but to go back to the World Court a second time. Again, all the papers are in here, the oral arguments, everything like that. I filed the papers at the World Court in July, and then I flew up to Geneva to be there in situ with President Izetbegovic and Foreign Minister Harris-Elijah for the Owen Stoltenberg plan. I won't go through all of that here, but basically I sabotaged the whole thing then and there. Indeed, later on, President Izetbegovic publicly stated I was the one who convinced him not to agree to Owen Stoltenberg. And then when that was done, I flew back to The Hague to argue the second round of provisional measures of protection, which I won. And again, overwhelmingly so, except that this time the Russian judge dissented. And by then, the Yugos had appointed a judge ad hoc. He dissented. Other than that, all the rest of them agreed with me. But despite my best efforts, I still could not get the World Court to rule against the genocidal arms embargo. At the very beginning of this process, I'd advised the Bosnian government that to break that arms embargo imposed by the Security Council, I would have to sue at least one of the members of the Security Council that imposed it, because the Yugos did not impose the arms embargo. They didn't impose it. They didn't oppose it because they have the most powerful army in Europe.
Yeah, they had the arms for it.
So I got up early in the morning, about 2 a.m. after winning that second World Court order, and flew to Geneva to consult with Foreign Minister Harris-Elijah, Vice President Gonich, President Izetbegovic, saying that the next step here is to sue Britain for aiding and abetting genocide. So President Izetbegovic said he would consider it, and I came back here to my office to work on the World Court lawsuit. And on November 15th, President Izetbegovic authorized me to sue Britain for aiding and abetting genocide against Bosnia, to seek provisional measures of protection against the British, and also to stop the then called the European Union Action Plan. I had convinced the World Court to rule against Owen Stoltenberg, and so they were out of the picture. But a new variant, the European Union Action Plan, was on the table. And I advised the president that the papers were ready within 2 weeks. I had drafted them all. They were all ready to go. I was negotiating with the World Court for a hearing date before Christmas. This was around December 1, when it turned out everyone threatened the Bosnian government that if I filed those papers, there would be terrible consequences, including the British saying that they would starve the Bosnians living in Sarajevo. All the food for Sarajevo came in from U.S. Air Force Base in Ramstein, Germany, flew into Sarajevo. That was under the control of British and French troops. So the British just said, well, we'll starve you people if Boyle files that lawsuit against us. So what happened, an agreement was concluded between Britain and the Bosnian government withdrawing that lawsuit, although I did preserve our rights at the World Court to sue Britain at any time because that agreement was concluded under force, duress, and coercion and was invalid. Then what happened was that the Europeans, the British, demanded that I be fired because they all knew full well I was very successful and was in charge of developing the legal strategy for Bosnia. And eventually the Americans went in and told President Izetbegovic I had to be fired. So, the poor president, there wasn't much else he could do, so he fired me. And that was that. So at that point, I was out as Bosnia's lawyer and ambassador to the World Court, although I continued to work for the Republic behind the scenes, advising them, doing work for them, for President Izetbegovic, etc. So that's what happened.
I'm really happy that you just mentioned that you more or less demolished the plan of Vance and Owen. This was really madness. So on behalf of everybody from Bosnia, thank you very much for doing so. One of the things.
By the way, I want to point out, I did all this work free of charge. I didn't charge the Bosnian government anything, and I ate my own expenses, paid for it out of my American Express card and my own bank account, although eventually that expense money was reimbursed to me by Bosnians living in Canada.
Okay, really a strong story, and really happy to hear that you got reimbursed for your effort, although what you did could not be reimbursed if you ask me. One of the questions that I'm puzzling a bit about is there was a verdict in 2007 in regards of that Bosnia was suing Serbia for genocide, and basically, even though they could document the genocide was happening, they could not document the responsibilities of Serbia, but they are stating that Serbia was failing to prevent and punish the genocide, which they knew was taking place. How do you comment on that verdict at that point in time in 2007 and the ruling?
Oh, sure. I had won the whole lawsuit in 1993. Yeah. I had two massive, overwhelming orders against the Yugos to cease and desist all acts of genocide against Bosnia, both directly and indirectly. Not only did I have those two orders, I had a third order, what is known as an Article 74 article under the statute of the International Court of Justice. When the court is not in session, the president can issue an order that is binding on the parties. So I won three orders right then and there from when I filed the lawsuit on March 20th until September 13th, three orders. No one had ever done that in the entire history of the World Court. So I had won the lawsuit. That's why the Americans, the British, and the other Europeans demanded I be fired. And I had also stopped the Owen Stoltenberg carve-up of Bosnia, creating enormous problems for them. So they all demanded I be fired. And what happened then? Nothing at all. Basically, the lawsuit was sabotaged. The Americans, the British, the Europeans did not want to see a genocide ruling against Yugoslavia, because that would mean Yugoslavia would never be able to join NATO and the European Union, not with the mark of genocide on it. So that lawsuit was just sabotaged, and the proof of it is I had won the lawsuit by September 13th, 1993. There was not even a trial until 2006. Let me repeat that. There was not a trial for 13 years. Okay. I had told the court I'd be ready to move forward immediately with the trial as soon as I could get the documents filed. So 13 years, the lawsuit was sabotaged. And so you got the result you did in 2007. Regretfully, there it is.
Yeah. And at that point in time, I noticed that the Bosnian government had a period of 10 years to react upon this verdict. And they did in 2017, I think. But why did it take so long for them to act upon this verdict?
It was sabotage again. When the World Court decision came down in 2017, if I had been the lawyer, would have, in 2007, I would have immediately worked on an application for revision, because you had 10 years to file an application for revision. And I would have prepared that case starting the day after the World Court decision came down in 2007. What did the Bosnian government and its legal team do? Nothing. Nothing at all. It was sabotage.
So would you say that it was?
Well, let me continue my point. Let me continue my point.
Mm-hmm.
So as the deadline came near in 2017, some Bosnian friends of mine got me access to the Bosnian news meeting, and I raised holy hell on this. So at the last minute possible, the Bosnian government appointed Professor Sheffer at Northwestern Law School to put together an application for revision. I'm not criticizing Sheffer here, understand. But it was 10 years too late. So, of course, they lost. And that was that. So, this was consistent sabotage by the Bosnian government and its legal teams from 1994, when I was fired, until 2017. And there we are today. And there's really not anything that can be done about it at the World Court now. The only thing that could be done, if the Bosnian government wanted to do it, which they don't, they're completely paralyzed, is to go back to my lawsuit against Britain. All of the papers for my lawsuit against Britain are published in my book, Stopping Serb Genocide Against the Bosnians. And as I explained in there, when that lawsuit was withdrawn, I did file a statement with the World Court saying that the lawsuit against Britain had been withdrawn because of threats and coercion perpetrated against us and Duras, and for that reason, I reserved our right to renew that lawsuit at any time. Likewise, the Bosnian government today could sue Croatia. Once Tuđman unleashed the Croatian army and the HVO against us, that was after the Vance-Owen plan, I immediately recommended to the Bosnian government that they give me authority to sue Croatia at the World Court for genocide. I repeatedly made that recommendation, but I never got that authority to sue Croatia. Well, certainly Croatia could be sued if they wanted to. As you know, still today, the current government in Croatia is planning to steal Herceg-Bosna. That's going on right now today as we speak. We all know it. So there it is. So, those two lawsuits are still there. But given the paralysis of the Bosnian government, I don't see them authorizing a lawsuit either against Britain or against Croatia.
Yes, exactly. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you before was, did the Bosnian government did this on purpose? So basically, did they sabotage this on purpose from the period of time from 2007 when we got the verdict until 2017? But I think you already answered this question. Yes,
sure,
they
the
did.
Americans and the British and the Europeans, all of whom want to destroy us, put pressure on the Bosnian government. At the Owen-Stoltenberg negotiations, you have to understand who tried to destroy us. This was 30 years ago now as I speak.
Yes.
Completely destroy us and wipe us off the map. It would have been worse than Srebrenica. And I later became the attorney of record for the mothers of Srebrenica. Who were trying to do this? The United Nations itself, I stopped them. The European Union and its member states, represented by David Owen, I stopped them. And the Americans fully supported the Owen-Stoltenberg carve-up. Secretary of State Warren Christopher intervened and tried to get me fired, silenced. And President Izetbegovic would not go along with that. So we had the whole world against us 30 years ago at the Owen-Stoltenberg negotiations, and they've always been against us. And that's still the case today. The Americans, the Europeans, the UN, they are not our friends. They tried to destroy us. I stopped them in 1993. But the game plan is still the same.
Thank you very much for elaborating on this. So from a retrospective point of view, what could have been done differently in order to succeed? I know you were stating that the whole world was against us, but now looking back at this 30 years horizon, is there something that could have been done differently in order to achieve a more positive result in regards of the verdict from 2017?
Well, I've given you my analysis. It's all water over the dam. There's nothing we can do about it now. But my original advice, to the Bosnian government was to sue Yugoslavia, Russia, Britain, and France, and then later Croatia. That might have made a difference for genocide, and get orders of provisional measures of protection against them. That might have made a difference, but it didn't happen. So there you are.
So how has this judgment influenced your work in the field of international law and human rights?
Well, when I am advising clients who are victims of terrible human rights violations, I inform them that I am the only lawyer in the history of the World Court going back to 1921 who won single-handedly 3 orders of provisional measures of protection. So maybe you should listen to what I have to say. Some do and some don't, but there it is.
Thank you very much for that remark. And I think we had a half an hour for this session, and I can see that we are at the end of our time. Before we end this session, I would actually like to thank you for everything that you have been doing and what you are still doing, as far as I can see, for the people of Bosnia and for Bosnia as such, starting back in the days in March 92 and all the way till today. Thank you very much, Mr. Boyle. It's really highly appreciated.
Sure, my pleasure. I have many friends in Bosnia-Herzegovina and also in the diaspora. I don't think I have any more friends in the Bosnian government. I used to, but that really doesn't matter to me. I know I have a lot of friends there and in the diaspora. So thank you.
No, thank you very much. And thank you for joining Beyond
Sure.
the Silence.
Bye-bye. Thanks for having me on. Bye-bye.